You hear the ding dong, you can start talking.
Meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. There was no ding dong.
Oh, there will be.
Okay.
But you can start talking now. If it says it's streaming, you can start talking now.
Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to Thursday at 12:30. That means it's time for the Frost Advisory. I'm Ann Frost, and my partner in crime is Mary Barbara Hanna.
Hello.
And our goal is to give you some cool information about hot topics for stellar presentations. And today's conversation will be actually the third in a short series of conversations that focus on the presentation, whether it be a low-tech or a high-tech presentation. The last two sessions, we've talked about how to put those together, some do's, some don'ts, some tips, some tricks, and all how that relates to authenticity, bringing out the best in people, and being open and receptive to constructive feedback. So I just want to remind everyone that we are here every Thursday. We do have a Facebook page, Frost Advisory, and we would welcome your visit to our Facebook page. Certainly like, share, invite other friends, family members, people off the street to join us on that Facebook page. And just to also let you know that in addition to these conversations that we are starting to have on a regular basis, if you have a question or a concern about presentation or a training that you're working on now, or you would like to contact us about delivering a presentation or a training for you, the way to get to us is through that Facebook page. We'd be more than happy to talk to you in some detail about that in the future. So I am going to stick to my promise about not doing all the talking and turn it over to Mary Barbara, who's going to talk about bringing out the best in people in terms of the content and the audience makeup.
Yes, well, thank you, Ann. And welcome everybody. As always, happy to be here. And you know, Ann and I have such a good time working together. We actually got on at 12 today, and we're talking at 12:29. We were just chatting. I totally forgot. I was just like, and then I looked at the clock and I'm like, oh my God, we're actually supposed to be doing something. So I appreciate always Ann. And hello to our great friend Kay Jung behind the scenes, helping us get our Facebook page more viewers and getting people attracted to what we're doing. We are doing this organically. We haven't paid for any kind of publicity yet. We're working that way. I think it was the end of July. Our goal was to get to the end of July and just see how we did before we invested in some publicity. Wow, publicity. That's terrible.
It's the pandemic.
I'm having it exactly due to the pandemic. I can no longer speak, which will make the next 20 minutes really interesting for my presentation. But anyway, so let me get started then on our Ann Frost approved PowerPoint. I sent it to her right before and I said, you know, beautify as necessary. And she said, oh no, it looks good just the way it is. So let me, so here I am trying to share the screen. There we go. Thank you.
This is always the hardest part of our conversations, is getting this to share the screen.
It is.
Now, Bill Gates, if you're listening, do something.
Here, yeah, everyone's shouting at our screen, take a training. So Ann, tell me what you see on the screen.
I see a slide that's at the top says leadership differentiators.
Excellent.
1, 2, 3,
with
and a bunch of pencils.
Okay, very good. With a red pencil.
Yes.
So as Ann and I have talked from the very beginning, for us, these are three things that we think differentiate us from other people. Our authenticity. And I would say, Ann, that our authenticity really comes number one, because we have so much experience. You know, we've been doing this for a long, long time individually and working together just recently, really the last 18 months, I guess I would say. But we are really who you see us. I mean, if the camera wasn't rolling, we would still be exactly the same. So when you see Ann and I listen to us talk, very close to how we are just naturally without being live on Facebook. So authenticity is key to being, from our perspective, being a good leader. The two we're going to focus on a little bit more today then is bring out the best in others and the willingness to give and receive constructive feedback. And I think that these two things just come into play constantly. You've got to have a bit of a thick shell if you're going to be presenting at any time. And again, Ann and I are trainers. This is what we do is present on topics, whether it's just for a one-day workshop, it's multi-weeks, multi-months, 2 years, whatever. But if you are doing a sales presentation or presenting just an idea, if you don't normally talk to other people, but you're doing it for the first time, you still got to build that shell a little bit. You got to toughen up a little because people are going to question everything you say. You may think you've come up with $1 million idea, and you may have. But people will always see things from their own perspective, and they will think of things you haven't thought of. So how, developing that agility, as Ann calls it, is key. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today when it comes to presentation and delivery. So one of the things I would recommend to you when you want to bring out the best in others, in education, this is called scaffolding. And scaffolding is a 3-step process. And it starts with the first one being recall. So what does that mean? It means to ask people at the very beginning, what do they already know? Right? You're asking them to access that long-term memory. What do you already know about this topic? So one topic might be, the DISC behavioral model, which is something that Ann and I use pretty frequently to talk about the different DISC styles. And there's more to that whole element, but just suffice it to say DISC, has the 4 behavioral models. So asking people, what do they already know about DISC? Another thing that we use often is situational leadership. What do you know about situational leadership? How many people have heard of this? How many people have ever been to a training? Those kinds of questions get them to start recalling what they know. And for people who raise their hands, you can check in a little bit and say things like, oh, what do you remember from your training? Or, how long ago did you attend that training? And they may say, oh, it was a long time ago. I really don't remember that much. Well, what's one thing you can remember? So you're asking people to recall what they do know. And if they don't know anything about it, if it's the first time they're hearing it, that's fine too. We're still going to add on to that information. Go ahead, Ann.
Well, to complement what you just said, if they don't know anything about the subject, could you ask then, what would you want to know?
Absolutely. Yeah, prime the pump.
Yeah.
When I say this, or you could even say things like, what do you think of? If I say situational leadership to you and you're not familiar with that phrase, but take it apart, what do you think this could be about? Right. So even doing a little projecting into the future, if you will. Yeah. What interests you about this? What do you think you might like to know about it? What does it remind you of? Can you think of a time that you might have used something called situational leadership? In a specific situation, what kind of leadership style should you use?
Yeah.
We can turn it around. So yeah, thank you for that. You can prime the pump and ask them, well, what do you think it could mean? So getting them to recall or just even project into the future what it could mean. And the second step in scaffolding then is to actually learn the material. So you've said, we're going to talk about situational leadership, and today we're going to talk about, there's 4 quadrants in situational leadership. We'll just say today, we're going to talk about quadrant 1. We're going to just start at the very beginning so that the next time you meet with everybody, you can say to them, starting with recall, do you remember what we talked about last week? Mm-hmm. For Ann and I, we talked about PowerPoint, and how to put together a PowerPoint. So I could talk to you if I was going to scaffold that information. I could say, yeah, last week we talked about PowerPoint. We looked at, not only the top layer of it, what to do when you're using PowerPoint, but the bottom layer, how to actually put the technical parts of it together. And today we're going to learn more about animation or whatever. So the recall gets everybody thinking about what you've already talked about. That's that foundation, and then whatever layer you're adding. And if you look at the picture in the background, there's not just one new layer, right? If you think about going to school for 12 years, right? And each of these little layers represents 1 year of schooling, right? That's scaffolding. What you're learning in kindergarten, you are building all the way up to using all that stuff when you're a senior in high school, right? We don't think
Mhm.
about learning to read again. We don't think about learning the names of our colors. We know all those things. We learned that at the very foundation. But we're adding on to that by being able to read, very intense books, maybe on, Middle English and whatever, calculus you might be learning, or physics. So, so the learning is what happens on top of the recall. And then finally the application. And that's when you know that you've really learned something, is when you can successfully apply it. And not only that, but tell other people how to do it. That's really the test of understanding what you're talking about or what you're doing. Can you use it, and can you tell other people how to use it?
Mhm.
So how does this bring out the best in others? This is how we help people learn. So when you are presenting and delivering information to people, even if it's a sales pitch. So Ann and I both love Mary Kay product. And since we're not being endorsed by anyone, it's okay for me to tell you how much I love Mary Kay. But anyway, and I do. So we were, using a Mary Kay product. That would be one example of recalling, if you were selling something, how many of you have to deal with dry skin? How many of you have been looking for a product to take away the wrinkles and the fine lines, right? Well, I've got something that you would really appreciate using, because, research tells us that this particular chemical, or this particular, what's the word I'm looking for, element.
Formula.
What was it?
Formula.
Yeah, formula, perfect. This particular formula works particularly well overnight to do this thing. Apply that. So I want you to use it for the next 2 weeks. Take a before picture, use the after picture. So even if you're doing a fast sales job, this is the thing to use with people. Recall, ask them to think about something, teach them something new, and then have them apply it. And you build on this over time.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's just a 2-hour presentation, that's fine. You still use the same thing. You still use the same elements. So this is how, go ahead.
Well, I'm thinking this also is what we talked about last week about organizing your content for the presentation.
Yes.
This is, to me, another really good model of how to organize that information.
Yes, absolutely. So that again, you can even write your objectives. Yeah, right. You can write your objectives. What do I want them to recall? We will recall this. What do I want them to learn? They will learn how to do this. They will be able to apply, situational leadership or what have you.
Yes.
Right.
I'm glad I showed up today. I learned.
And I'm always glad. I think you should show up at my house every day. It's different though. That happens about 5 o'clock, but we can talk about that later. So that is the bringing out the best in others. To be open to feedback during this process is also to expect that there will be people who will tell you they are already experts in their field. They already know this information. And so what can you do about that? One of the things, and we may have touched on this previously, but one thing I do when somebody tells me, oh yeah, I took this class, I've actually had people tell me that they train others on this topic. Oh, I'm actually a trainer on that topic. when that happens, when I was a younger trainer, I used to be really intimidated by that. But now I realize I can't be the expert on everything all the time at 100th degree, So having other experts in the room means that you can call on them to add what they know, or to give a different perspective, or how do they use it. So when people say to me, oh yeah, I actually already know all about situational leadership, I actually do training on that. I'm like, wow, I am so lucky to have you in the room. This is perfect. And I am authentic when I say that. I'm like, oh, well, lucky me. I really mean it, because hey, what other light can you shed? What have I forgotten to say? I often use the phrase, what didn't I say that you think people should know about? Well, you didn't talk about this part. Great, do you mind sharing? And it's not only asking them to share, but then physically stepping aside. So I either go take a seat. They don't have to stand up. They don't have to come to the front of the room. But I will physically go sit down or step over to the side away from the center of the room. So I'm no longer the focal point. This person talking becomes the center of attention, as they should. If they really are an expert and they're sharing something professionally, they should be the center. And then once they've wrapped up, I step back up to the center of the room and say, wow, thank you for sharing that. And apply something, take what they've said, and I try to apply it. Like, oh, so in this situation, this would be a great time for people to remember what have you.
I could see how that would be helpful in the application. Not only sharing what they learned from their past experience or perspective, but if they're all in the same if they're all from the same organization in the same room, they may be able to make those connections better from the content to their real life application, which is sometimes, I know it's hard for me sometimes to do that. I don't walk in their shoes every day. So having someone that's obviously willing to share, impart their wisdom, and to encourage them to frame it in that way. It's like, talk to us about your situation and how this was helpful to you.
Also,
Or what you learned from it.
Sorry, I agree. And also thinking that this may be the first time, because, we're coming back to Camden Clark, our local hospital that we're doing this with, but any group that you work with, a lot of these people don't actually get to see each other on a regular basis. Yeah. They may only interact during the training, but what they're learning about what this person knows and can do, they'll take back to work and be able to say during a meeting, oh my gosh, I just found out that Amy knows all about situational leadership, and I really think we should get her in here to our next meeting to talk to our group about that. Mm-hmm. So having people have that opportunity to share what they do know, to your point, and be the local subject matter expert, the SME, truly beneficial for the company. Mm-hmm. And then you look like the queen of all things, because you can gracefully handle somebody else having the same or more knowledge about something. Mm-hmm. Without being intimidated, which it's easy to feel intimidated sometimes, the way people go.
Well, I think to your point, when you're just starting out, you do feel intimidated.
Yeah.
By that.
Right, because you feel like, I know that I felt like I needed to be the expert. They've hired me because I know more about this than anybody. Yes. And as we've said, that really isn't true. And especially when it comes to applying it in their workspace, only they know the real benefit. And as you said last week, Ann, you talked about the fact that applying it in their workspace. Oh, I just that quick lost my thought. I was looking at my slide. Anyway, if it comes back to me, I'll hop back onto it. Something about applying it in the workspace. Anyway, so the other thing to consider then when we're bringing out the best in others and being open to feedback is our audience. And I know that when people show up to trainings, they are not dressed like these people are at Let's Make a Deal. On the outside.
Too bad.
Exactly. How much more fun we would have.
Or maybe we should dress up like we're on Let's Make a Deal.
Ann and I, next week, we're going to talk about activities and icebreakers. I think this is a new icebreaker. People who have on their person or in their purse or in their backpack, how many people have a $5 bill? Who can show me? And then they get some little reward for having that thing, or some little chip that they can collect and then turn their chip in to take an extra break, or I don't know what, but I see some potential here for a game.
I like it.
Yeah. Ann and I are always wheeling and dealing, as they say, about activities and interesting icebreakers. It has to be fun for us too, folks. So who's your audience? And the reason I selected this picture is because, as I said, usually in a training, everybody's dressed very professionally. They either have on uniforms or a shirt with the logo and the jeans, or their medical, scrubs, what have you. But on the inside, this is what they really look like. They come from all walks of life. They have all different kinds of experiences. And as Ann and I were talking before we went live, the challenge is you're going to have people who learn at a different pace. So part of the art of presenting the presentation material and delivering that material is knowing that you have people that are whiz bang, they're going to get it right away, very fast, catching on, and they just want highlights, they want to move quickly. You're also going to have people that like to take their time, and they really want to delve into the information, and they want time to process that information, time to talk about that information, time to what have you. And there are ways to deal with that. So when you're thinking about bringing out the best in others, but also being open to feedback, we want to bring out the best in others by pacing the types of activities that we do and giving the people opportunity for reflection. There's a couple ways that you can do that. And one thing that Ann and I talked about is you could do something we call a group sort, whereas you ask people, you say, if you're the kind of person that likes to get through things very fast and you just like the high details up here, you don't want all the in-depth stuff, stand on this side of the room. And if you're the kind of person that likes to take things slowly and really go through each detail, step to this side of the room. And then you can make an activity out of talking about the benefits of having each type of person. Why is it great to have people that like to move quickly? Why is it great to have people that pay attention to detail? It also gives you some information as you're going through your presentation, the kind of, when people might start to get bored because they like to move quickly, or you're moving too fast and people are losing their way because they're not done processing. It's a real balancing act, and you're never going to get it perfect, right? And if this is the type of presentation, as we talked about with the sales pitch, like example, Mary Kay products, those kinds of things tend to move fast anyway. And the people that are there, if they have more information, you can meet, or need more information, you can always meet with them separately later, and make that an offer. And if, to the point of, if you have more questions, I'd be happy to talk to you after the presentation. You can say that. I'd be happy to talk to anybody at the break, or over lunch, I'll be sitting over here for anybody who'd like to go over any of this information. So always offer people that opportunity or that reassurance that you can meet with them. They can talk to you more about it if they would like to. So, go ahead.
Well, back to identifying people that, how they process information and so forth. One thing I think that's been really helpful in terms of the Camden Clark training is, because it's the same group over time, over a series of instruction, we have table tents for them, and they have taken that disc profile. Yes. Each person has identified what their letter is, or letters, and they write it on their table tent. Mm-hmm. So that's telling us immediately about their style and some of their preferences, some of the things that, because we're kind of familiar with that acronym and, the strengths and challenges associated with each behavior. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure, I was thinking if you were dividing people into two groups, I want to hang a label around their neck or something, so I know this is the group that likes to and this is the group that wants me to hurry up. But then I made that connection. We're already doing that in some fashion, so that that we are aware of, and we can adjust accordingly.
And I think there's something to be said for asking people to develop a skill set that says, if you don't care for a lot of detail, learn to slow down a little bit and appreciate this time that you have away from your desk to slow down. And if you are a turtle and you enjoy going slow and looking at all the detail, while beneficial to the group, there is something to be said for getting comfortable with moving a little bit more quickly. So there, because we want, part of being a trainer is, of course, we want people to be comfortable and enjoy the ride. On the other hand, we also want them learning and applying. And that means moving out of their comfort zone often. Yeah. Because the audience, these people coming to us, already have ideas. They already are, experts in their fields, or they've already got a lot of, preconceived notions about what they're going to do, plus preconceived notions about just sitting through training anyway, right?
Well, and I like what you said about coming out of your comfort zone, because to me, that's one of our jobs as a trainer, is to create an environment where they feel safe to do that.
I agree. Yeah, I like it that you put it that way. That they feel safe. So some of the things to consider then when you're putting together your trainings, and especially PowerPoints, I would say, is consider the culture to whom you'll be speaking. So for example, in this idea here, what is culture? It's all about their values, the behaviors, the beliefs, and the attitudes. So two groups that we're working with currently is the Camden Clark Hospital here in Parkersburg, but we're also working with the state of West Virginia and all of their correctional facilities. And those are two very different cultures when you think about it, that, when we think about workplace culture and also country of origin, which we'll come to in a minute. But thinking about what is valued in the workplace. So at Camden Clark, what are their values is putting patient safety first. Their patients have to be safe. They have to be in a safe environment. The employees need to be safe because of, the different, COVID-19 being the perfect example these days. Interestingly, I would say value safety is also number one, but in a very different way in the corrections facility. Keeping the workers safe and keeping the inmates safe, which is not an easy thing. It's a whole different way of keeping people safe. What behaviors are valued? And really coming back actually for a moment to corrections, one of the things we talk about very often is trust. Like, I've got your back and you've got my back, that kind of trust. I trust that you will protect me and you can trust that I will protect you in a situation where there might be a high degree of danger. What kind of attitudes are beneficial in the correctional facility? When you're talking about staff, there is a fraternal attitude that is much appreciated. You know, all for one and one for all is their motto. You know, we're all in this next 8-hour shift together. We're all going in together and we're all coming out together. It sounds very dramatic, but if you've ever worked in corrections or have any sense of it, you know that it's not dramatic at all. So same for Camden Clark. What are the attitudes? You know, when people come in, we have to help each other, whatever that is. So the other part of it then is choosing your videos, your pictures, you know, any of the elements that go into your presentation, choosing them wisely and in accordance with the values, the culture of the workplace. I don't know if you have any examples, Ann, but the one example I was going to give is I do teach English to people in China, business people, and it's through the company I was working through, they had the presentation already put together. And it was interesting to me that every single thing about, in this particular one, was about giving feedback. It was always a man giving feedback to a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 4 different pictures. This is how often I went through that training. I can recall there were 4 different pictures, and each picture was the woman was being corrected, and she would have to go back and redo the work and come back again for feedback. So I finally put my foot down and would say with my students, male or female, we've just looked at these 4 pictures. What do they have in common? And typically the women noticed that it was always the man giving feedback. The men never really called, like that didn't ring a bell with them. And so I would, as an American, I would talk about American work culture. And I would say, this wouldn't fly in American work culture. So I don't know if you have any examples.
Well, just an example, but it's a different tact. It's I get caught up in old movies and old TV shows that I recall from my youth, which, let's just be honest, was decades
ago. Last century.
Yeah, it was the last century. So I'll pull pictures from Andy Griffith, you know, Barney Fife pulling his hair out, or, you know, just to make my point. And there has been at least 5 occasions where the people in the room, I think there was one that was even a Star Trek. Didn't even know Star Trek. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. So you need to just to be aware of who's going to be in the room. What's the demographic in the room? What is their culture? Because some of the things that you choose as a photo or a graphic on your slide, just, it's like they don't get it. They don't get the connection.
Right.
You know, that to me is clearly expressed
as the creator.
By this one picture of Barney Fife. It's like, you don't get that? You don't. So that's my example. So just be alert to that. And that's
absolutely
another reason to make that investment of time prior to the training itself.
Right.
Is when you're having that conversation with whoever contacted you. It's like, who is going to be in the room? Is it going to be an age range? Is it going to be all men and a couple of women? You know, what's the breakout there? Because the more information like that you have, the more tailored you can make your presentation to them, which not only it sends an underlying message. Not only do they get the information, the content, but I hope they recognize I have really tried to create something that you can make a direct connection to, whether it be the content itself, the graphics I choose, the colors, you know, whatever that you can pull in that sort of relates back to their work environment. It's another way to take the extra step.
Which is key. I mean, we're back to this idea again of building relationships and building trust and taking people safely out of their comfort zone. Another element that I try to use often is to have multicultural slides, to have a lot of different people represented in my slide. It's true. I would say because of where I live and where I've been working, I would say there tends to be just one color of person. I can't help it. I mean, I can't undo that. Corrections, it tends to be mostly male. Manufacturing tends to be mostly male. More women these days, but mostly male again. Uh, so making sure that I show slides that have women in leadership positions, people of color interacting, people, just a wide range of things. Because go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to jump in. I have I've done trainings for several manufacturing plants, and I'll find a graphic that may be expressing or relating to, we'll say, conflict resolution, but it's a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
So the people that work in the plant,
right,
with, their vests or their hard hats,
coveralls, yeah, right,
or overall, whatever, yeah, their work attire, they're not going to relate as well to a guy in a suit versus if I could find a picture, that's more similar to them. So it takes a little effort, I think.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. People, as I said, we all come in with preconceived notions. If you're coming into a manufacturing plant, the guy in the suit represents the us versus them. He represents them up in the office overlooking us. I've already got conflict with that guy. We're not talking about that kind of conflict. Usually we're talking peer-to-peer conflict. So exactly to the point that you're saying, that is, think about where these people work, what they do, what's going to best represent situations that are familiar to them. And especially country of origin, as our, pre-COVID and, COVID-19 and all that nonsense aside, we do hopefully have an influx of immigrants coming in, people from different cultures, different countries, who would also like to see themselves represented on the screen, especially if they're in a place where most people, they don't look like most people. They already stick out, in their minds. People are already looking at them. So think about what makes them comfortable to see slides that are representative of them. Just something to think about. And of course, people are going to express their opinions loudly, clearly, repeatedly. Sometimes their opinions are great. You're doing such a great job. I love this class. Other people will say things like, I totally disagree, which I'm sure Anne's had this happen as well. People have said to me just straight out in front of others, I don't think you know what you're talking about. I totally disagree with what you're doing here, and I don't think anybody should listen to you. Thank you. And I was just like, yeah, okay, well, okay, what can I say about that? So the first thing is I would recommend, and Anne, I think you second this, is don't argue with people. You're not going to win, and because you're turning it into a winning thing, competition, accept what people are saying. If it's very offensive, you can say, well, I'll just go back to what that person said. I don't agree with what you're saying and what you're doing. And I said, well, I think other people should have opportunity to make up their own minds. And what I'm talking about is actually based on research. I'm not presenting something that I just made up 5 minutes ago out in the hallway, but the work I'm showing you is based on research. And again, Anne and I alluded to this or have talked about this in the past week or two. When people work together and they come into the training, other people already know who the troublemakers are in your room. You may not know who they are, but everybody else already knows. So when that person speaks up, it's never surprising to the room because they're like, oh, that's how they are. That's just how they are. That's the kind of stuff they say.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just how they are. That kind of, it's like, to me, that becomes a crutch for that person. That's just how they are. Yeah, they disrupt the whole class. But I think, when that does happen, I'm getting better. I honestly feel like I'm getting better about taking that breath. Okay, because I often will invite people to disagree with me at the beginning.
Yeah.
When you're reviewing today's objectives, and it's like, we're going to talk about this, or when we get to that particular slide, I said, feel free to disagree. This is based on research, but I also feel strongly that this is a helpful tool or whatever it is. If you invite people, some of them are going to take you up on your offer, so you need to be prepared for that. So what I really try hard to do is breathe, thank them, of course, as you say, Mary Barbara, but then look at it as a teachable moment. I will never, ever really profess to be an expert about any subject. I'm highly enthused, very self-motivated to learn, like about leadership or teamwork, or or effective communication. I want to know as much as I can about that, but we're changing every day. So, and moving forward every day in a lot of those disciplines. So there's always going to be something new to learn. I will never know it all. So I have to look at those situations, and he knows his name, who gave me this opportunity to look at it as a teachable moment. I might learn something. If this is the SME in the room, I could learn something. And that learning could be content. It could be about behavior. It could be about what to do next time. It could what not to do next time, so on and so forth. There's many layers to that as well. So
I agree. And so you've hit on pretty much everything that, we've got listed here. The don't argue, the private meeting, again, this is something I actually mentioned a little bit ago. If it gets contentious, say, look, let's not take time now. I'm happy to talk about this with you. If you wouldn't mind meeting with me during the break, or we can talk during lunch, but I don't want us to get sidetracked because we do have these other things. And this is back to being the leader of the group in that moment. It may feel confrontational to you, but people are counting on you to take care of this problem and to get us past the discomfort and move us on. So practice being able to say things like, I'm happy to talk about this with you. I don't want us to get off track right now. Let's, put a pin in this until break, and we'll come back to that. And if they continue, you can say, look, there's not much more I can say about that until the break. And so as I've got here in the notes, and you can even just go take the break right then. So one of my examples that I shared with, what was that? What was that in?
Take them out in the hall right now.
Exactly. And I have done that with people. I had one person who was sleeping through class, and I tried to very gently nudge her a few times. This was in a whole different situation years ago. And I finally did take her out in the hallway and just say, you don't have to be here. Oh, but it's mandatory. So then you need to, sit up straight and do whatever it's going to take to stay awake, because sleeping isn't going to help you here. Anyway, that's a whole different story. In this particular case, my example was a man who made some disparaging remarks about my PowerPoint slide. Now, this is a guy who was very detail-oriented and very analytical. And anybody who knows me knows that those are two things I'm not. And so he was commenting on the actual physical slide. I can't remember, the two pictures were not the same size. I mean, I think it was that petty. I just want to point, he really said something like, I just want to point out that your two pictures aren't the same size. I thought he was teasing me. I thought he was joking. So I started laughing. I'm like, well, that can happen. Ha, ha, ha. And he's like, no, I'm serious. This is very disturbing to me, and I'm really challenged. We had just gone through the disc thing. And so he was being a very strong C. And he's like, I'm telling you right now that this is actually very disturbing to me, and I'm having a hard time focusing because the two pictures are not even. And it was my very first training with this group. I was going to see them over several trainings. And I'd already taken some grief from another person in the room who is also a very strong C, somebody who was throwing their weight around a little bit, if you will, and being kind of a jerk. And, so I literally said to the group, wow, this is a great emotional intelligence moment. And I'm going to need a minute to pull myself together. And the man who had made the comment said, oh, are you talking about my emotional intelligence? Are you talking about me? And I said, no, I'm talking about myself. I'm feeling really aggravated by what you've said. I'm feeling distracted. And I really need a minute to get my sense of humor back. And saying that, apparently, he never said he was sorry to me. But during the break, he actually said to other people, wow, I feel really bad. I didn't know she would take it like that. I was just being honest, or what have you. But and so somebody actually came back to me and said, he feels really bad about it. And I'm like, it's totally fine. I have to learn as a trainer as well. This is also a learning experience for me. So if you have to take a break, if you have to move people into an activity or a small group discussion, in that case, I could have, I just did it right up in front of everybody and said, I'm going to need a minute here because now I'm thrown. but it's authentic.
Mm-hmm.
It's really me. And I'm really building that relationship. People see me as being vulnerable. I didn't cry. I didn't break down. I didn't throw anything or stomp out, as I sometimes have wanted to during some trainings. I literally one time, Ann, do you remember? Ann was training, I was training. We were both on break, and I'm texting Ann. We're in two different cities. And I'm like, holy shit, this guy. And she's like, I'm right here, sister. I'm here for you. I'm here for you. And I'm like, how can I just not walk out? Like, it's taking everything I have to not hold up my little showcase and hit the door.
Sayonara, baby. Yeah. I don't have to take this from you.
Exactly. So I think we talked about this last week. It's so great having somebody who knows how you feel, that you can text in a moment of desperation, or call on a break, or send whatever, and just be like, white flag, I've got my white flag up, and have them help you
and
out.
That's kind of a nice little segue, I think, to encourage folks. I mean, we're here for you, kids.
Absolutely.
If you have a bad experience, hopefully not as bad as what Mary Barbara went through, but it's like, we all go through that stuff. And I would have to say the majority of the people in the room want you to be successful in what you're doing. So it's hard when it's the one comment on the evaluation, or it's the one person that says your slides are crooked. It's like, because
pictures aren't the same size.
Yeah, it's like, they just burst your bubble. So it is nice to have someone you can reach out to and get it off your chest. Sometimes that's all you need, is just a vent, and then you're fine. But you need to have somebody that can be sympathetic and empathetic at the same time. And if we can provide that service, we're here for you, kids. Just close.
I agree. I mean, I think, we actually had a comment last week, and I think it was someone that you knew. And I'm sorry to say, I'd have to go look very quickly. Her name might have been an R name, like a Rose.
Yeah.
Rose.
Yeah.
Rose.
Mm-hmm.
Rose. Oh, good. Oh, good for me.
Yeah.
And she said, she was talking about the PowerPoint thing, but she said, I needed this 40 years ago. And the truth is, that's exactly what got Ann and I doing what we're doing. We could have used two people like us 40 years ago, not 40, but, last week, 29 years ago, whatever it is, just a shoulder to cry on and say like, oh my God, this is crazy. And I really need someone to help me, talk me down off the ledge, as they say. So that's really what we're here for. We've got a lot of great experience. We think we've got a lot of great stuff to share with you. You can also do train the trainer. We can also train your group. You can employ us in many different ways. So just knowing that we're here and ready to serve, especially Ann and I are getting ready to go back to not full-time working, but close to it. Our trainings are starting to pick back up again. And so we're out there experiencing the new landscape of doing remote training, of doing trainings with face masks on and socially distanced in the classroom, having two groups in the same building in two different rooms. So the presenter is on the screen in one of the groups. So, any questions you've got, or if you've got any insights to share with us, and the rest of the people.
About training remotely, because let's face it, old dogs gonna have to be learning some new tricks here.
Old dogs that use Mary Kay and look great.
Yeah, we just look like puppies. But it's like, this opportunity with the Frost Advisory is giving me a little experience under my belt on how to do it. But I've never actually trained people like classroom style. So if anybody out there has got tips, I would more than welcome them.
Yes, we would. Well, you could even be a guest. We would love to have you come be a guest on the show, right, Ann?
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
We can have a third person on here. It would be awesome to have somebody, another talking head out here, and have them be, and ask questions and all that stuff. So even if you've been watching and you'd love to come on and share something, or share an experience, or have us interview you, just let us know. Comment below, as they say. Yes. All right, Ann, you're on for next week. So what are we talking about next week?
We are talking about, I think we're going to,
Did I steal your thunder?
No, I just want everybody to know I've got a master's degree in communication, and sometimes I just can't put two words together. We're going to be talking about icebreakers and activities. And if you'll recall from last week's conversation about organizing your content in such a way that it's chunked, it's grouped together, that doing that helps you deliver content and then support it with an activity or an icebreaker, whichever is appropriate at the time. And then you deliver more content, and then you engage in an activity. We're going to give you a couple of examples apiece, our favorite activities, what worked well, what we could do differently next time, what you have to consider if you do decide to do these particular activities in your training, and how they can really enhance and underscore, emphasize, all those words.
You little thesaurus, you.
Yeah, the content that you have to share. It just enables them to, that hands-on learning piece, I think, can make such a difference. And do they take it home with them and put it to work?
Yes.
The next day. So well, that's what we're going to be talking about. If you have activities or icebreakers that you have used, that are listening folks, then and want to share those, that'd be, put that in the comment section. And we will, I've lost
yes,
video.
Go ahead.
I've lost, can you see me?
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
I do see you.
Okay, good.
I see you. All right.
I don't see anything but the
your
word
beautiful
Zoom.
face. Don't do anything weird. Don't drink out of your wine glass.
I won't.
You know.
So we'll be here next Thursday, same time, same channel, with more information about presentations and authenticity, bringing out the best in people, and of course that constructive feedback piece as it relates to incorporating icebreakers and activities into your session. So 12:30 Thursday.
I'm actually looking at my phone. Is it an easy way to see the comments and so forth on the video? No comments today. Lots of people reached and viewing, but no comments, which is fine. If you're shy, we're not going to call you out. But just remember that we are here for you, and I'll look forward to your interaction.
There you are. I found you.
Are we here? Oh, good. I'm so glad. I didn't want to get lost. All right.
I need help. Okay.
No, everything's good. All right, people. So next week, icebreakers and activities. We'll get ready to share those with you. So bring your notebooks and pens. And if I'm really good, I'll actually post something about them on our Facebook page, but also maybe post them on the website, Learn, Grow, Succeed, Training and Coaching. So another place you can visit us and find out all the different kinds of trainings and more that we do have for you. So I don't know, I get distracted. Now I see things pop up while I'm talking and I think I should look at it because it might be a comment, and then I lose my focus.
As long as it's little hearts or balloons.
Right, exactly. Dollar bill signs? I don't know.
Yeah.
All
so
right,
thank you, everyone. It was good to see you.
Yes, and we will see you next week.
All right.
All right,
Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Bye, Ann.
Bye.